On behalf of the Tri-State Coalition Against Human Trafficking and Slavery, I welcome you here today on this day of National Human Trafficking Awareness Day. And we thank the Grand Harbor for hosting this event. And as we always usually do, we will begin in prayer. So let us pray. O God, compassionate source of all life, we pray for an end to human trafficking. You created us all in your own image. We pray that people everywhere will treat one another with respect and dignity. Strengthen us to work for a world where all people are free to live their life in peace and joy. Help us to grow in awareness that we are all connected and that what we do or do not do impacts everyone. Give us wisdom, inspiration, and courage to stand in solidarity with the victims and with one another. God of healing, we pray for the perpetrators of trafficking. Bring about a conversion of their hearts to stop exploiting women and children. May the fire of your Spirit fill each of us and enable us to walk with reverence and care for all whose dignity has been crushed by trafficking. May we make our own the words of Micah, to act justly, to love tenderly, and to walk humbly with our God. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Mary Lechtenberg. I am part of the Tri-State Coalition, and I'm a Dubuque Franciscan from right here in Dubuque. Catholic women religious are part of a global collaborative effort. Actually, they're part of a network of networks who work to end human trafficking. Anti-trafficking training and programs started in 1990 across 5 different continents, and now encompass local efforts to promote preventive measures and to help victims. Since 2010, January has been designated in the United States as National Slavery and Human Trafficking Prevention Month, with January 11th, today, marking Human Trafficking Awareness Day. The Tri-State Coalition Against Human Trafficking, initiated by women religious in the Dubuque area, is nearly 5 years old. This collaborative effort began with 12 sisters meeting every month. The coalition has branched out to include many members who are not in our religious orders, as well as collaboration with other like-minded organizations. For instance, the Dubuque-based organizations Set Free and Friends of the Family. Because human trafficking is the fastest growing criminal activity in the world, the coalition does its small part by focusing on education and by raising awareness of this activity. We have given numerous presentations for many groups in the area, as well as have hosted a booth at the Dubuque County Fair for 3 years. We are not alone in raising this awareness. Pope Francis said, "Human trafficking is an open wound on the body of contemporary society. It is a crime against humanity." Just this week, both houses of Congress approved a measure to offer $430 million to curb the trafficking industry. This money will reach across international borders through several government agencies. It will support prevention efforts and services for victims of both commercial sex and forced labor trafficking. It is greed, it is money, which drives this activity. Awareness on the part of all of us can assist in reducing the demand for human trafficking.
The scope of human trafficking is immense. It's a $150 billion criminal industry that affects more than 40 million people globally. It's among the top 3 crimes in the world, along with the drug trade and illegal weapons. Our belief in the dignity and freedom of each person calls us to increase and to diversify our efforts to eradicate this crime of slavery against individuals and society, and to do so by acting locally. Data shows that between 70 to 75% of sex trafficking occurs in hotels and motels across the country, and Iowa is no exception. So we are embarking on a campaign to train all hotel and motel staff in Dubuque and the surrounding area. Our hope is to have this be a trafficking-free zone, safe for all individuals and families. In this effort, we are collaborating with the Iowa Network Against Human Trafficking and the Coalition on Human Trafficking out of Omaha. The main authors of the training materials we use are retired state and federal law enforcement personnel, including the FBI, who have investigated and prosecuted sex trafficking cases in Iowa and in Nebraska. Our goal is to help employees to realize, recognize, and respond appropriately when they see signs of trafficking. Iowa Governor Kim Reynolds introduced this campaign to the state in 2017, and our initiative here has the strong support of Mayor Roy Buell and city officials and Travel Dubuque. Research by Creighton University's Human Trafficking Initiative discovered that in eastern Iowa, in any given month, 397 unique persons are advertised online for commercial sex, and that 70+ persons per month are at high risk of being victimized in sex trafficking. Studies further show that traffickers and buyers will travel 1.5 hours to reach their destination. That means that this campaign must also take place in other eastern Iowa cities, and that is indeed happening. In Iowa, this training first took place in Council Bluffs and the Des Moines area, and over 100 facilities have been trained to date. In 2018, 17 hospitality properties in the Cedar Rapids, Iowa City, and Waterloo area had their staffs trained. And just this week, Clinton announced that all 9 hotels and motels in the Clinton area have committed to this training. We realize the contribution that each participating lodging will make as that property frees up staff to participate in this education during work time, and then follow up by implementing clear policies and protocols in situations of possible trafficking. We believe that our goals are shared by the leaders of the hospitality industry here in Dubuque, and that our partnership with them will result in prevention and meaningful intervention, thereby discouraging and limiting the greed and the culture that treats persons as disposable commodities. One hotel has already engaged its staff in this training, and we applaud their stepping forth to do so and be the pilot in this vicinity.
Hi. The Iowa Network Against Human Trafficking and Slavery is Iowa's first and only statewide volunteer organization devoted exclusively to ending human trafficking in all forms. The NAHT believes that human trafficking is modern-day slavery, where vulnerable people are forced or coerced into involuntary servitude for the purposes of financial profit for the traffickers. I'm Susie Wright, and I serve on the NAHT's board as a representative voice for those seeking to end human trafficking in this part of the state of Iowa. Over the last 17 years, I've seen significant improvement in the level of understanding that human trafficking is unfortunately a reality. And it's here in the United States, and it's here in the tri-states. Wisdom in how to address victim survivability has improved through the increased knowledge of what is actually happening to those who are being trafficked. Taking this transforming knowledge to the hospitality industry is truly taking the work to the front lines of human trafficking. It is with great joy that I can share that today we're here to honor and recognize the management and the staff of the Grand Harbor Resort and Water Park for having completed human trafficking awareness training. We started first by training the managers so that they would understand how pivotal they would be to the fight against human trafficking. We knew that if the managers were supportive and ensured their departments would show up to be trained, we would be successful. We needed them to do more than just agree to the training. We needed them to believe that it was vital to the guest satisfaction, worker safety, and business profitability. We had an arduous task to coordinate all the training in such a short time so that we could do the presentation today. We only started this in December, first with the managers and then with the employees. The work was well worth it. The rewards are already being demonstrated through the questions that were asked even during the sessions. The nature of the trainees' questions changed from, does trafficking really happen here? To exploring possible situations that might hypothetically happen to them in the facility. Conversations on vulnerability have inspired dialogue about overall safety for all aspects of the hotel. So, on behalf of the Iowa Network Against Human Trafficking and Slavery and the Tri-State Coalition Against Human Trafficking, I would like Steve Geist to step forward so that we can present this certificate, and then he's going to say a few words about why the hotel agreed to be the first local hotel to be trained, and a little bit about the results so far.
Well, thank you, everyone, and good afternoon. Feel guilty taking this certificate because of it was really the work of a lot of people. Susie, the coalition, the VVM, my staff, they put all this together. So I do feel a little guilty taking this, but we're very proud. And I hope the true honor in this is when Susie tells me that she's handed these all over the city to every hotel in town. So that's good to be there. As far as why we said yes, if those of you that have ever worked with Susie, you know it's hard to say no to her. So, but it was pretty alarming data that was presented to us when she came and taught our managers. And after that, it wasn't only an obligation to protect those guests that come. We get anywhere from 500 to 700 guests here per night on a weekend, and a lot of those are children and families. And it's just alarming that it's not if it's happening, it's when. And it was the awareness that we gained during that training was an eye opener. I could be honest, I thought this was a big city problem. Absolutely not. So the awareness we got in the training, not only the obligation we need to do to protect our guests, but the obligation we need to do to protect our employees. Traffickers will also traffic hotel employees. They're very vulnerable. So this put our staff at a high alertness. And we're getting questions. We're getting a lot of questions, and we've only just completed it less than 2 weeks ago and finished last night. So I thought it was an arduous task and an impossible task to train 200 plus employees, but they mean business, and they got it done. So we're very proud. We thank Susie. We thank everyone involved for letting us be the first, but hopefully we're definitely not the last. So thank you very much.
We're really grateful to be here today and to have some special guests from our city and county to be, and state level, be represented among us. And I'm just wondering, we have Mark Dalsing, the Chief of Police, and Joe Kennedy, the Sheriff of the county. And would either of you have some remarks that you would like to, questions?
Be kind to the camera guys and come over here.
I'm sorry.
Since Susie and the Good Sisters didn't tell us we would be speaking, my comments will be very brief. It doesn't matter what the crime is, whether it's drugs, whether it's burglary, robbery, whatever it is. Law enforcement can only do so much by itself. The vast majority of the work is done by the community that it serves. So when folks call 911 when they see something out of the ordinary, it's what gets us there and gets the job accomplished. And when an educated hotel staff sees something suspicious and gives us a call, it's what's going to get the job done. So I applaud the efforts of the coalition, Set Free, and all the partners we've worked with for so long in this community. It's a great first step, and I'm sure they're going to be very pushy about it, Susie. But we are very happy to do whatever we can to support this endeavor, because without involved community members, it's not going to get resolved. And it's a small piece, especially with such an ugly underground network of crime such as this, based on the internet and based in secrecy. It's virtually impossible for law enforcement to crack. So that's when we need all the support of the community and the folks in this room. So thank you very much for everybody in this room for all you've done.
Well, first of all, I would like to thank the coalition for stepping up and taking the lead on this. It's an extremely valuable training. We, just to kind of reiterate some of the things that Mark said, we know that things are happening in our community. We want to do everything possible to keep the people of our community safe, keep people that are being trafficked in here safe, get them to a safe place. And I find it interesting, you know, when they say that they're having an awareness month, an awareness day. In a case like this, does there have to be a month or a day for awareness? Shouldn't every day be a day of awareness for victims of human trafficking? And I think the important thing, getting out into the community and going into the hotels and giving training to these hotel staff kind of gives us an opportunity to say we are having, you know, a human trafficking awareness year or life, instead of just celebrating it in one day or 1 month. So thank you to everybody who was involved in the training. Hopefully with a little bit of effort from the coalition, we will be able to get out in the community, get the remainder of the hotel staffs in the area trained, and we can truly have a human trafficking life instead of just a day or a month. Thank you.
And we're really grateful to have Representative Chuck Eisenhart. Chuck, would you want to say anything about any efforts at the state level that we might collaborate with?
I would just say from here,
I can't say it from here.
this is called Payback is Hack Chief. We get him involved in a lot of different activities, and we make him stand in front. So, State Representative Chuck Eisenhart. I'm pretty sure that if we had as many sisters living in the Des Moines area and as many congregations active there, that the state would be far farther along in dealing with this and a lot of other issues than we are. But unfortunately, we don't have that great resource. I can speak from experience dating back to when I worked for the Witness newspaper, that we're really blessed to have so many active folks here, making sure these important issues get touched upon. I'll just tell you from my own personal perspective, I attended my own day-long training on this issue put on by the Attorney General's office in Independence. It's been probably 3 years ago now. I'm not sure what the role his office continues to be in terms of the public, awareness. I think it could be stronger. Usually what he brings to our attention tends to get Attorney General Tom Miller, by the way, good old Dubuque boy, grew up about 2 blocks from me. Generally what law enforcement brings to our attention, whether it's through the county attorneys, the state attorneys, the police, or the sheriffs, we tend to give serious attention to. So I would work with law enforcement if there are things that we can do at the state level in terms of policy or resources. We have some very strong people on those committees, and I'm sure it would get attended to. So the Attorney General, it all starts with education awareness, and I know most of the sisters here probably spent at least part, if not all, of your careers in education, and that's what the training's all about. So appreciate your leadership, and if there's anything I can do in connecting you with the people who need to connect with, I'd be happy to help.
Thank you.
So we'd like to open this time up for any questions that any of our guests or press might have for us. We had pretty comprehensive introductions in the beginning, but are there any unanswered questions?
So what's the game plan for reaching out to the other hotels? Have you already contacted the ones in town here, and what's going forward? What's your plan?
Why are we doing this?
This is evolving. Several of us met with the Dubuque Lodging Association this past week, the representatives. Steve was there, and he gave a wonderful testimonial to his colleagues from the other hotels who were here. We have several teams that from among our coalition members, and some of them have already signed up to contact specific lodgings, and some of them have just begun that process now. This really is our kickoff. We anticipate that this is going to be a long-term project. There are more than 20 lodgings in Dubuque. By the time you go out to Dyersville and across the river and everything, and some will need to be trained more than once because there's a high turnover among staff in the hospitality industry. So we have not set a goal of X number of facilities by the end of the year. Some are more complex because of the size and everything. So, we're offering this, but the hotel or motel needs to accept it. This is an invitation. This is not a mandated kind of training, although in the state of California, the legislature has passed laws which are mandating hotel and motel training on human trafficking. So really, we encourage you, when you're making reservations at hotels, either in Dubuque for family or friends, or when you go out of town, to ask those lodgings if they have had their staff take human trafficking training. And that may be a significant factor in whether or not you decide to take your business to that hotel. And it's also a way of encouraging them to participate in this project that we have. So there are things that everyone can do to help with what we hope will be a safer and trafficking-free community.
I'm sure many of you belong to national associations or organizations, and this is an idea which the Leadership Conference of Women Religious has employed. And we don't have our national meetings in any hotel who has not had training of all of their staff. So you can ask for that if you're on the central committee of organizing your national or regional conferences. You can ask them, has this hotel been trained? Have the members of your staff been trained in human trafficking? So that's a nudge you can put out there.
Other questions?
How does the training work? So what's the process that goes through?
Or do you want me to take that one?
Sure.
Since I've done it 10 times.
Bring it back.
Yeah.
Hold it up.
So the training is done where you come into a room at the hotel. That's where we've done these at the Grand Harbor. And we have a training binder that we can follow. And it's the scripted program came from the FBI agent whose name was Stephen O'Mara in conjunction with the Coalition on Human Trafficking. And it came with a script and it came with PowerPoint slides. And so we use those together to train the people about what it is. So first we teach them what human trafficking is, and then we teach them what does that look like in a hotel, and then we teach them how to respond to that, because you have to be very safe to do that. When I said earlier that people are standing on the front line, I'm not kidding about that, because it's so easy for people to be recruited into being trafficked, either being trafficked or actually being recruited to become a trafficker, and they don't realize what they're saying yes to. And that's an essential thing when it comes to training hotel employees and motel employees, is to let them see where they're vulnerable first, and that's how you get them to buy in on the fact that this is important, because once they realize that there's a vulnerability, then they know how to protect themselves, and they know how to protect other people. So that was the three-step process, and on that sheet it's recognize, respond, and then realize. So they're there. Sorry, I don't remember what the three of them are off the top of my sheet. I read my PowerPoint slides.
Just keep saying.
Okay, so that's what you do. So you do the training, and the training is very heavily focused on scenarios. So it talks about some of the actual human trafficking cases that have taken place here in Iowa. It talks about, here are some examples of things for ways that your staff might be vulnerable. So you get into those conversations and you look and you see, how can we help you do what needs to be done? And it's important as we do those trainings that we have people there who are prepared, so that if somebody responds negatively to what's going on, that we've got somebody there to help them. So maybe somebody has already experienced human trafficking. Maybe they've experienced some other form of trauma that they're what's called triggered. So we need to have people there who are prepared to help them in that moment, because they may cry, they may become angry, somewhere in between. So knowing how to help people experience that and then process through that is something that's been an important part of what we're able to offer when we do these trainings.
This is a map of the state of Iowa from the Attorney General's office, and it indicates some of the traffickers who've been picked up and arrested for their activity. So it gives the county and the year. And one time I was in the little town of Jessup, and we had a training there, and I talked about Fredericksburg, which is on this map, and how many knew where that was, you know. And they're about the same size. And I said, there was a trafficker picked up in Fredericksburg, Iowa. Oh, okay. Something I forgot. Those of you who are members and active in against human trafficking, would you raise your hand? You know, we have several organizations here. So, you know, really everybody's hand should be up, right? Okay, all right, okay, thank you. We just expanded our committees.
Any other comments or questions?
Is there any sort of cost for the hotels to participate in this training?
It's free. It's free to the hotel. We offer it free.
Okay.
And we pick up the Xerox copies for the pre and post test and things like that. But it's a cost to the hotel because these people are on work time. Steve probably can best answer that question. What do you see as the cost to the hotel?
Money well spent.
To that, I was kind of brainstorming in my head here after talking to Susie. If the state were to have a policy, and I'm not saying I can make this happen, I can maybe jumpstart the conversation with the bill, but if the state had a policy that we are not going to have publicly sponsored conventions at hotels where this training has not taken place, or we will not reimburse the expenses to employees who stay at such hotels, creating maybe an incentive for the training. The question is, what it would be the capacity to actually get the training to many, if not most, of the lodging facilities in the state? Is this the only place it's happening?
No, no. As I mentioned, it's already taking place in the Council Bluffs, Omaha, Des Moines, and it's in Cedar Rapids, Waterloo, that kind of corridor. There was a group that came to our training from the Quad Cities, but they have not yet, they're not quite as organized at this point as we are. So, and I think that the organization that we're with would be able to give you a list of the specific hospitality sites, because our groups all have to do an annual report saying which specific lodgings they have been trained. You know, so I think that the data of where is available. I'm not, once you get up into the Decorah area and all that, I'm not sure when you're in smaller cities how many of those have been trained in particular.
I'm assuming that many, if not all of you, are volunteers at this.
Yes, oh yes.
So
Absolutely.
if we just relied on volunteers to do the training, it's probably gonna take a couple, maybe a few years to get this into every.
Well, and the thing is that sometimes when we do educational presentations about human trafficking in general or whatever, people come up and say, well, how can we help? You know, what can we do to get involved? And we are, at this point, and every place that's doing this, we are looking for more volunteer trainers. So if somebody really wants to do it, they can get in touch with us, and we are able to train other people. And that's how it really, once you have a larger pool of trainers, you can respond to more requests or initiate it with hotels to a greater degree. So this is what can you do if you want to have some education yourself and then be trained, then you can become one of the trainers also. And it's challenging because you have to fit into the schedules of the hotel staffs. So, you know, sometimes if you have an 8 to 5 job and they can only do it at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you know, this becomes a little scheduling challenge. So people who have some sort of flexible schedules in that's a help also.
Other questions or remarks?
Just last question. So this is a higher quality hotel. I think there might be a stereotype that most of this goes on in maybe your lower quality or out of the way hotels. Is it true that it happens in all levels of motels and hotels, including higher end?
Yes.
And if so, if they're trying to blend in, what are some of the things that customers can look for to see if there's something amiss?
I think it would be very hard for a customer to be able to recognize what they would be seeing, because the thing that's very true about human trafficking is that there is no, that's what they look like. When I was little and I asked my dad what a prostitute was, because I'd heard the word on TV for the first time, he loaded me in the car and he drove me down Main Street and he showed me. Because they used to be down on Main Street, and you could point to them and you could say, those people, see how odd they look? That's not true anymore. And because trafficking takes place so often through the internet, it's not visible on the street corner anymore. And because they don't necessarily dress the same way if they're going into a high-end hotel versus when they're going into a lower-end hotel, it's not obvious what they're looking like. So training the hotel staff to see what's normal for their normal customers, that's a lot easier to be able to have that conversation. For individual people to be able to spot it on the street becomes much harder because it's so subtle. It's extremely subtle, the difference of what you're looking at. Because you're like, well, they couldn't possibly be being trafficked because they have a cell phone. But the cell phone might very well be the way, probably is the way, that they're being controlled. And, well, they're all by themselves. Couldn't they just run away? Not if a family member was the person who was trafficking them. Not if it was a significant other that was trafficking them. Not if they were doing it because that they were afraid of what could happen to somebody that mattered to them if they ran. So it's worth the hour to learn how to do this, because we got the training down to an hour, in spite of how much I talk.
Good questions. Yes. Well, we have excuse me, just a couple announcements of opportunities, of things that are coming up. Excuse me, start coughing.
Okay. There are a couple of events coming up. One of our members, Kevin Schwendinger, right here, is doing a presentation on January 24th, a historical perspective on slavery. We call this contemporary slavery. And he's been out and about on his bicycle in different parts of the state. And one of the questions he gets most frequently is, I didn't think we had slavery anymore. And so he's going to kind of do the history post-Civil War. And that's at Statera Health and Wellness. And there's a screening of an important film called I Am Jane Doe. And that's February 21st at 6:30 p.m. at the Heritage Center, University of Dubuque. They have that big open space at the Heritage Center, so we invite everybody to come. And part of this is is about how mothers in particular had to do so much pressure and in order to get that whole issue of Backpage shut down, which was the prime site for advertising commercial sex. And so this is a documentary, and it really gives you an insight into people's thinking and how this is an ongoing struggle from so many different aspects, and it's been very highly recommended. It's free. Oh, and it's free.
Tell them Kim Hilby's part of the coalition.
Yes, one of our coalition members who's out of town today is Kim Hilby. She's in the criminal justice and social work departments at the University of Dubuque, and she teaches a course on human trafficking, and she's really been a leader in our group. So it's thanks to her and the University of Dubuque that we're able to be operating this. And now, thanks to the Grand River Resort and Water Park, Tony Romas, and Set Free, there are refreshments in the next room. So we will open the door, and you can all migrate in this direction. Thank you all very, very much.